Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic? It's a question that confuses many well-meaning people. Some assume that an attack on the Jewish state must also be an attack on Jews. For instance, evangelical leader Franklin Graham once dubbed criticism of Israeli settlers an assault on God's chosen people. At the same time, others justify their attacks on Jewish people around the world by pointing to Israel's actions, claiming that they are only being anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic.
Sie sind die Feinde der Menschheit. Das System des Zionismus ist das Krebsgeschwür der Menschheit.
So what's the deal? Is criticizing the Jewish state anti-Jewish? Not quite. In fact, it happens all the time in Israel itself and among Jews everywhere. Just as someone can oppose the policies of the United States, France, China, or Saudi Arabia, they can oppose the actions of the Israeli government. Doing so doesn't make them a bigot. Objections to Israeli domestic policies, settlements, occupation, or treatment of the Palestinians are political positions, not anti-Semitic slurs. This is true even when the criticism is harsh, controversial, or makes some people uncomfortable. Israel is a country like any other, and it deserves criticism like any other. If that were the end of the conversation, it would make our lives a lot easier. But unfortunately, it's not. That's because criticism of the Jewish state sometimes masks animosity towards Jews, and as a result, anti-Israel movements often attract anti-Jewish bigots. Just look at the website anti-Zionism.org, which is actually run by neo-Nazi white supremacists. This is pretty predictable if you think about it. After all, Israel is home to half the world's Jews. Having that many of them in one place is naturally going to draw the anger and attention of the millions of people who despise Jews and want them to disappear. For this reason, anti-Semites are obsessed with Israel, and it's one of the biggest excuses they use to rationalize their prejudice. In many places, it's not respectable to openly hate Jews, but it is respectable to criticize the Jewish state, and so bigots will say their problem is with Israel, when their real problem is with Jews. What does this look like in practice? First, there's the obvious stuff. Around the world, anti-Semites assault Jews and vandalize Jewish schools, synagogues, campus institutions, and even Holocaust memorials over alleged Israeli actions thousands of miles away.
When this began, mid-May, in Gaza and Israel, anti-Semitic incidents in the US spiked. Jewish diners attacked in Los Angeles when a pro-Palestinian motorcade stopped, men got out and
started running toward the tables and asking indiscriminately who's Jewish.
This is just the usual harassment and violence that Jews have experienced for centuries. Israel is simply the flimsy cover story that perpetrators of these crimes invoke to justify their classically anti-Semitic actions. Then you have traditional anti-Semitic lies that are repurposed as anti-Israel lies. For example, back in the Middle Ages, Jews were repeatedly accused of murdering Gentile children for perverse purposes. Some anti-Semites still make this bizarre medieval accusation known as the blood libel today. But others have adapted it for the 21st century, with some twisting it into the claim that Israel is perpetrating genocide against the Palestinian people. In actuality, according to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, the Palestinian population in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza has skyrocketed since Israel's founding in 1948. Whatever one thinks of Israel, that's obviously the opposite of genocide. This false allegation isn't a legitimate argument. It's a blood libel on a national scale, an ugly update of an ancient slander.
إسرائيل الآن يركز على قتل الأطفال، وأنا أظن أنه هذا شيء مكتنز في العقلية الصهيونية والعقلية اليهودية التاريخية التي أدمنت قتل النساء والأطفال، وكلنا يتذكر كيف كان اليهود يذبحون المسيحيين ليخلطوا دماءهم بفطيرهم المقدس.
This is not the only anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that has received an anti-Israel facelift. Take the mother of all anti-Semitic myths, the idea that Jews secretly run the world. Because it's frowned upon to say that the Jews control the economy or government these days, anti-Semites instead insist that Israel or its Zionist supporters do. Robert Bowers, the white supremacist who massacred Jews at a Pittsburgh synagogue, claimed that Zog, Zionist-occupied government, was in control of America's political parties. So did the supreme leader of Iran. All of these anti-Semitic ideas, rebranded as merely anti-Israel, are revealing in that they just replace the word Jew with Israel or Zionist.
We need to end Zionism, which is huge, and it's probably the biggest problem that we have in this country today and around the globe, which is a few people controlling pretty much everything, all the money, all the business, brainwashing all the people from the education systems, everything.
Israel is losing out. They're losing the media war despite their connections. The tide is turning.
What are their connections?
Deep pockets.
What does that mean?
Well, they're very influential people. They control media.
Other instances of anti-Jewish prejudice disguising themselves as anti-Israel arguments are more subtle. These often involve the Jewish state being subjected to criticism leveled at no other non-Jewish country. Consider the United Nations, whose Human Rights Council has condemned Israel over 70 times in its 14-year history, more than all other countries combined, including vastly worse regimes like China, North Korea, and Russia.
It is also appalling that the Council has one standing agenda, and that's Israel.
Here is a bit of context that you might not know. The United Nations from 2012 through 2015 has adopted 97 resolutions specifically criticizing an individual country, and of those 97, 83 of them have focused on Israel. Is Israel truly deserving of 86% of the world's condemnation, or possibly is something else afoot?
To be clear, the point here is not that Israel has never committed human rights violations that deserve criticism. It's that Israel's violations deserve to be treated like those of any non-Jewish country, but they are not.
For the simple truth is that for as long as Israel has been a member of this institution, Israel has been treated differently from other nations at the United Nations.
Any unbiased observer understands that this is not because Israel is more evil than all other countries, but because it is more Jewish. This disparate treatment was so egregious that in 2017, the US Senate sent a letter to the UN Secretary General, calling on him to combat the institution's bias against Israel. It was signed by all 100 US senators, from Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So what's going on here? Why is Israel, a country that certainly merits reasonable criticisms like any other, attracting so many unreasonable attacks? Here's an analogy that helps untangle this. Criticizing Barack Obama doesn't make someone racist, but as the first black president, he naturally attracted vicious critics motivated by racism. Similarly, criticizing Israel doesn't mean that someone is anti-Semitic, but as the world's only Jewish state, Israel naturally attracts many critics motivated by anti-Semitism. Keep in mind that sometimes a claim can be offensive and wrong without being anti-Semitic. A person might just be repeating something misguided they heard from friends or social media and be speaking from ignorance, not hatred. The inconvenient truth is that there's no simple test for determining whether someone is anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, or just plain anti-Semitic. Anyone who tells you that criticism of Israel or Zionism is always anti-Semitic or never anti-Semitic doesn't seriously understand anti-Semitism. What's important is that we be aware that anti-Semites are drawn to Israel debates, that we are vigilant about rejecting their bigoted baggage, and that we prevent them from corrupting the critical conversation about the Jewish state and its conduct.